Welcome to the Big Success Show. Today, we answer the question, do you need industry experience to start a business? Brought to you by FinancialFreedomTool.com. Plenty of money for life.
Big Success with the professor and Mary-Lynn.
Stick to what you know. You ever heard that advice, Mary-Lynn?
Oh, it's the safe way to do things.
That's exactly right. The problem is that, if we stick to what we know, we never grow, right?
That's a good point, too. That doesn't sound so safe.
But I think most people have heard this phrase before, stick with what you know. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes we get asked the question, does it apply to entrepreneurship? You see people go off. I started one of my early businesses. Actually, several of my early businesses were in industries I didn't have any experience in because I was like 18 years old.
Right.
So,
sure. But you were looking for opportunity, not necessarily for exactly what you knew.
Well, exactly right. But the thing is, that's what I did respond to opportunity, and it worked pretty okay for me. So, I think that's the question that we want to answer today. Should entrepreneurs stick with what they know? Hi, I'm George Kruger, a.k.a. the Professor.
And I'm Mary-Lynn, and you probably aren't going to be very surprised to hear that it's less risky to start a business in a field where you do have experience, right?
Absolutely.
So what are the advantages then? Are there advantages to starting a business in an industry where you don't have any knowledge?
Well, Mary-Lynn, remember when we started Big Success? We were really lucky.
To 12 long years ago.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes, we're coming up on 13, by the way.
My
but
gosh.
we're well past the 12 and a
13?
half. That's right. But the thing is, we've been kind of lucky because when we started Big Success, we didn't know anything. So the doors were wide open. We could have done anything we wanted, right?
Wait a minute. We didn't even know how to have a website.
Exactly.
We didn't know what's this whole
new.
podcasting thing. How do we even do this? We just didn't know anything.
Well, and so seriously, I kind of jest because you did have broadcasting experience. We were going into coaching, and I had coached people, mainly employees.
Right, you had business experience. We had experience,
yes.
just not necessarily in building this kind of a digital media company from scratch.
Exactly right. So now there are advantages, though, to being an outsider. We'll talk about that. But you're more likely to navigate through all the storms of owning a business if you stay in an industry you know.
So today we want to share some advantages and disadvantages that experience brings. So we're going to start with our advantages. 3 advantages that insiders bring to the table. And the first advantage is insight.
Exactly.
I'm not shocked that that's our first.
We'd like to give you a little insight on insight, though. So,
okay.
Experience leads to insight, which outsiders just simply don't know and really can't know until they get into the business. So some examples of this. You know who the customers are. You know who the competition is. You know where the deficiencies are in meeting the needs of those customers. You know what customers are willing to spend. You know the costs. There's so many things that you can bring to the table that it's going to take an outsider some significant work and some due diligence up front in order to try to figure this stuff out on their own without the same experience. And we're just starting the list, right? There's so much more that you gain by having industry experience.
Another advantage to having that industry experience is your network.
Absolutely. When you've been in an industry, you develop contacts, connections, relationships, a network that you can call on for help. People, your potential customers, you may know who will buy this product of yours or this service of yours. Suppliers, who are the best suppliers in the market for a company like yours? Possible employees, financiers. You're going to short circuit many of your problems when you have connections in these key critical areas.
Another advantage of industry experience is rules of thumb. Professor, what do you mean by that?
Well, every industry has formulas for success, rules of thumb. And so with experience, you learn what they are. For example, how much can you expect to keep from each dollar of sales? There's a rule of thumb, a KPI, some people might say, key performance indicator.
Okay.
What benchmarks should you use to judge your performance? What are the key factors that drive your business? These are all things that you learn in an industry that kind of will just come out as this is commonly how people perform in an industry.
So, based on these three advantages that we've talked about, advantages of having industry experience, this experience teaches you what you can expect right off the bat. And that allows you to just kind of focus on working in the business, not so much on the business.
You're a very good student, Mary-Lynn.
Thank you. All right, so coming up, we're going to talk about 2 disadvantages of industry experience. That's right after this word from our sponsor, financialfreedomtool.com. Plenty of money for life.
Looking for money to start your business? The Financial Freedom Tool helps you uncover money hidden in your budget so you can start your business sooner than you think. Learn more at financialfreedomtool.com. That's financialfreedomtool.com.
Do you need industry experience to start a business? We are talking about the advantages and disadvantages today of having industry experience. And we just got done talking about 3 advantages. Now we're going to talk about 2 disadvantages of industry experience.
Yeah, and just to kind of prelude this, so a preview of this is, if an industry is experiencing rapid change, there's the key word. Entrepreneurs love change because they know change is what creates opportunity. So if you see an industry facing rapid change, that industry may be a good candidate for new entrants, for new businesses to come in, for new entrepreneurs.
So that's if you're thinking, okay, I want to get into business, I'm not sure what, you should look for places, and even if you don't have any insight into it, you should say, you know what, that there's an opportunity.
Yes. So look for that change. That change is a sign that there may be an opportunity. I mean, you think about our world today.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity, And here's the thing, the more destructive the change, the better for you as an outsider.
All right, so let's look at 2 disadvantages then of industry experience, and which actually are advantages for the outsider.
Exactly.
But number 1 is the entrenched mindset.
Yeah, sometimes the executives at established companies just can't accept that the world has changed. Now, Mary-Lynn, just to paint a visual, sometimes they end up with their head so far up there, you know what, that it comes out the other end.
And not just executives of big companies, there are small business owners
absolutely.
who say,
No.
I haven't had to do social media and I'm not going to start now. I mean, we've heard that over the years.
Precisely, exactly right. So, people who keep pursuing the same failing strategies. That's the thing. These strategies have worked for years perhaps, and everything's been great. But all of a sudden, technology or something else happens. There's a tectonic shift, and things change, and you got to be willing to accept it. So you can't just hope that the new way of doing things is just going to go away. That's what a lot of people do. And so when you see an industry with executives who aren't responding to new threats, well, guess what? You may have just spotted your big opportunity. And that's big with 2 G's, baby.
Yeah, it is. All right, so then another disadvantage for the industry insider, but not for the outsider, is sunk costs. So first, Professor, what exactly do you mean by sunk costs?
This is a tough concept for people. I shouldn't say. This was a tough concept for me to grasp.
Okay.
You've invested, let's just say, $1 million in a business. All right. And now there's a new way of doing things, and it's more efficient and more effective than the way you're doing things. But the problem is it requires a new investment of, let's just say, 100,000. A lot of times we get so focused on the fact that we're going to lose $1 million that we fail to take advantage of the $100,000 opportunity, which is going to surpass that $1 million sunk cost. Okay. So it's allowing costs that are no longer relevant to interfere with daily decisions currently. That's kind of what a sunk cost is. So simply put, the existing players may think they have too much invested in the old way of doing things. So they're unwilling to deploy money to do things the new way. Now, when this happens, entrepreneurs are often able to step in with a new business model. And oh my gosh, this happens all the time. I think back a long time ago, we used to have these big, massive steel mills, right?
Right.
And what came along was we ended up with steel mills that were smaller. And so they were called mini mills. Well, they had none of the legacy costs that the big old steel mills had. So they were able to just come in and pretty much wipe the big steel mills out. That's just one example. So there's often a big upside when you spot a situation like this. Like most new technology, the internet has disrupted entire industries.
I know, when you were talking about that, I mean, you just thought about, I think about Uber and just the people who've been able to figure out ways to use apps to, disrupt and like just kind of change the traditional chain of events. It used to be that you would wait, you'd call a cab and you'd wait. But now you just whip out your app and call up an Uber ride, and it's faster and it's more efficient.
Yep, exactly right. And in many cases, there's a cost advantage to the new player. I remember hearing a guy who he talked to my class, actually, or our class participated in a lecture he gave.
And for anybody who is just tuning in or is not aware, the professor teaches a class on entrepreneurial finance at the University of Illinois.
Well, and his point was he was part of this big hospitality company. He was the CEO. And he's like, we've invested $1 billion and we have X number of rooms. And he says, this little startup comes along and they now have more rooms to rent than us, and they haven't invested anything in them. And that was, of course, Airbnb. So this is the kind of thing, these are the examples of the ways that you can gain an advantage over experienced people in the industry, because they do have a lot of costs, a lot of legacy costs that they have to, that they're factoring in, whether or not they're relevant. That's the key thing. So, just look for people who are factoring in their sunk costs, and you may find your big opportunity.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion, and after hearing about all of the advantages and disadvantages to having industry experience, it just seems like there are more opportunities than ever today to start your own business.
Absolutely right. And sometimes striking out in a new field is advantageous, but most people who succeed big do it in a field with which they're familiar. So it's important to realize that definitely it's a safer path to go to success, to focus on an industry you already know. But only you can decide which one is right for you and which one will take you to big success.
If you think you want to start your own business and are looking for ideas, we have a free one-page cheat sheet that cuts to the heart of the 5 ways to make more money, and it may even help you find your big idea. Click on the link in your show notes to get the download.
And we thank you so much for listening today.
Until next time,
here's to your big success.
Find Big Success at BIGG Success.com.